I wasn't the favorite. I wasn't even considered. But they forgot the quiet ones. Remember everything. My name is Elena Maybrook, and I've always been the one who didn't quite fit the Maybrook family mold. We were a Texas legacy or so, my mother liked to say. Acres of cattle land, horse stables, a white columned house that looked more like a courthouse than a home, and a family name that meant something in these parts. My father, Benjamin Maybrook, was a fourth-generation rancher with hands like stone and eyes that didn't miss much. My mother, Maureen, was what you'd call steel wrapped in silk, always graceful, always in control, and always crystal clear about what she expected from her children. There were two of us, my younger brother Caleb and me. Caleb had charm swagger, the kind of ease in the saddle that made old cowboys grin and young women swoon. He was the heir in every sense he had, Dad's smile and Mom's ambition. Me, I had books, a scholarship, and dreams that didn't involve ranching or small-town gossip. I left for college in California when I was 18 and never looked back, at least not until Dad got sick. I moved back at 35 when I heard the cancer had spread. I took leave from my job at the university and stayed for 6 months sleeping in the old guest room, making soup, helping with physical therapy, and quietly saying goodbye. Caleb came by occasionally. He was always rushing in from something business deal date meeting with the bank. He'd slap Dad on the back, flash that grin, then leave in a cloud of dust. He never changed the bandages, never stayed for the night sweats. But even then, I didn't resent him. I just assumed Mom and Dad saw things clearly. Then came the funeral. It was private, just family, a few ranch hands, a pastor. Mom wore black, but no tears. Caleb gave a half-hearted eulogy about legacy and what Dad would have wanted. What Dad would have wanted, I thought, was honesty. 3 weeks later, I got an email from my father's attorney. It was short, cold. Per the revised will dated March 3rd, 2024. The entirety of the Maybrook estate, including land assets and financial holdings, is transferred to Mr. Caleb Maybrook, Ms. Elena. Maybrook is not named as a beneficiary. No explanation, no call from Mom, no apology. I stared at the screen in disbelief, the date standing out like a wound. March 3rd. I was still spoon-feeding my father mashed potatoes on that day, still wiping sweat from his forehead, still telling him not to worry, I'd take care of everything. Apparently I didn't mean everything. I called Mom the next day. She picked up on the second ring, her voice tight and polite. Yes, Elena. You changed the will, I said, skipping past the niceties. She sighed. Your father wanted Caleb to have the estate. He's the one staying in Texas. He's the one who understands the land. You mean he's the one you've always loved more? Silence. Then calmly she replied, You were never going to stay. You never belonged here. You're too academic, too delicate for this life. And just like that, the door slammed shut. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. But that night, something inside me changed. I walked out to the old barn, the one that had been my hiding place as a girl. I stood under the rafters and whispered to the dust, I don't need their permission to belong here. Then I made a promise to myself, if they wouldn't give me my place in this family, I'd take it back without them ever knowing. A month later, I returned to California. But this time I didn't unpack. Instead, I started studying the estate public records, land deeds, tax liens. I called up an old friend from law school who specialized in property acquisitions. I asked him one question. Can someone take back what was stolen quietly? He laughed. With enough time and money, anything's possible. But time wasn't the problem. I had patience and a very long memory. 6 months passed before I returned to the Maybrook estate. I had no reason to, really, no invitation, no real obligation. But a year had gone by since Dad's death, and there was a family gathering, what Mom called a remembrance supper. She sent me a generic email about it. No warmth, no apology, just a line at the bottom. It would be polite for you to attend polite. That was her word for control. I flew in on a gray November morning. The estate looked different. Where once there had been wild grass and weather-worn fences, now there was a smooth gravel drive and freshly painted barns. The Maybrook crest was gone from the front gate, replaced by a custom sign. Caleb Ranch and Cattle Co. He'd rebranded our family. I parked near the side garage. My old room's window had been replaced with smoked glass. When I stepped into the house, the scent of new oak floors hit me like a betrayal. Everything had changed. There was a sleek new kitchen, a grand piano where Dad's old recliner had been, and glass shelves full of whiskey bottles and awards I'd never seen before. Then I saw it. My childhood bedroom. The door was gone. The space had been knocked down, merged with the hallway turned into a walk-in wine cellar. Mom greeted me in a stiff gray dress, her lipstick flawless. "You look tired," she said in place of hello. And Caleb, he swept in like a TV host, arms wide, voice booming. "Elena, look at you still teaching. What was it, sociology or philosophy?" "Political ethics," I replied. "Right, right." He grinned like it was a joke. "Still dreaming up those theories no one uses." I smiled faintly. Still running a business with no profit. That wiped the grin off for a moment. At dinner, the table was long and too bright. There were guests, bankers, ranchers, a state senator, no one I recognized, no one who remembered who my father really was. I listened to Caleb tell a story about revitalizing the land with solar irrigation technology. Dad would have hated. He made it sound like he was born to lead this place, as if no one else ever mattered. Then Mom raised her glass to Caleb for carrying the Maybrook name with pride and strength, just as your father would have wanted. Everyone clapped, I didn't. Instead, I looked down at my empty plate and whispered in my mind, no, he wouldn't have. That night, I wandered outside, walking the perimeter like I had as a child. That's when I saw him. Eddie, one of the last remaining ranch hands from Dad's time. He was older now, slower, but he recognized me instantly. "Elena." "That really, you," I smiled. "Hey, Eddie." He took off his hat. "Didn't expect to see you again." "Not after what she did." I froze, you heard. He nodded. "Everyone did." "Wasn't right. Your dad had plans. He told me the estate was to be split. But then after that hospital visit, everything changed. Mom rewrote the will." "Under pressure," he said. "Lawyers came quick. Whole thing felt wrong." Then he leaned in, voice low. "You know, Caleb owes half the county, right? Banknotes, feed suppliers, even the auction house in Abilene. Your mom's been quietly selling off the edge lands just to keep things afloat." That was the first crack in their perfect mirror. The next morning, I didn't leave. Instead, I drove 2 towns over to the county records office. I requested property maps, tax histories, sale deeds. The clerk looked at me funny. "Planning to buy some land, just researching family history." I lied, but I wasn't lying to myself. Back in my hotel room that night, I laid out every document like puzzle pieces on the floor. Turns out after Dad died, Mom had parceled off nearly 130 acres of the original estate, quietly sold under a holding company called Maureen Litted, most of it to pay off Caleb's debts or bribe influential local figures to keep his business image intact. And buried in one of the tax files, I saw a name I hadn't expected. Silver Ridge Properties, a shell company Dad used in the 80s to protect the Northern Ridge in case of bankruptcy. That LLC was never closed. And now it was technically unclaimed property until someone filed for it. I called my lawyer the next day. "We'll start with the ridge," I said. "Then I want every acre Caleb owes money on. Every lien, every expired lease. Buy it quietly, through a new company. Call it North Star Holdings." "You planning to build something?" he asked. I stared out the window at the old Maybrook land. "No, I'm planning to take it back, brick by brick." 2 months after that cold dinner, I was back in Texas. Not as the daughter who was left out, but as a businesswoman with a plan and a team. North Star, Holdings, the LLC I created, now had a virtual office, 2 paralegals, and one very sharp acquisitions attorney named Melinda Grant. She knew how to hide power in plain sight. "Rule number 1, she told me, the loud ones draw fire, but the quiet ones build empires." I didn't need to make noise. I needed leverage. We began with Silver Ridge, the land Dad had protected in the 80s. Since the LLC hadn't been claimed in decades, it was easy to revive. I paid the back taxes, transferred the title. And just like that, 52 acres of untouched Texas hill country was mine. Then we traced every debt Caleb owed. Turns out his flashy renovation came at a steep cost. Bank loans, missed payments, and rushed deals with local suppliers. He was trying to look like a mogul, but the numbers didn't lie. He was bleeding. Some of the land parcels were under lien. Others had been quietly leased to keep up appearances. All of it was vulnerable. I didn't buy from Caleb. I bought around him. I became his shadow landlord, owning the suppliers. He owed the land his fence crossed into, and even the lease to his feed supplier's warehouse. One by one, the pieces shifted on the board. 3 months in, he still didn't know. What he did notice, though, was that the back access road had been blocked off. The ranch had two entrances, one through the front gate and another narrow gravel path behind the fields. That back road now had a private property, no trespassing sign nailed to a tree. Under it, the logo of a company he'd never heard of. North Star Holdings. He called Mom. Of course, she called the county. By the time they realized the road was now under new ownership, I'd already bought the surrounding 18 acres. They thought it was a tech investor from Austin. We even staged a fake development proposal equestrian luxury retreat. Coming soon. A few renderings. Some talk around town. The panic started. I flew in again, this time unannounced. Stayed in town, watched from afar. And one morning I drove past the estate just as Caleb was yelling at a land surveyor. "This is Maybrook land," he shouted. The man just handed him a deed. "Sir, this has been privately owned since February. You're trespassing." Caleb's face was red. But he didn't understand yet. He thought it was just a mistake. A fluke. It wasn't. It was the first domino. Meanwhile, Mom tried to call me. I let it ring. She sent an email. "I hope you're not involved in whatever this is. Caleb is under a lot of pressure. Don't make things worse," I replied with 3 words. "I'm just getting started." By late spring, I owned over 70% of the surrounding estate land. The ranch was now boxed in, their roads, fencing, and storage all crossing land they didn't own. We didn't kick them out yet. We raised lease prices on their grazing pastures. We terminated water rights that expired under a 15-year clause Dad had quietly written. And when they tried to drill a new well, the county denied the permit. Why? Because the new landowner objected. Then came the cattle auction. Every spring, Caleb's business relied on the Abilene auction house to sell his stock. What he didn't know was that North Star Holdings had recently bought a minority stake in that auction house, just enough to delay his booking indefinitely. He called, begged. "Can you pull some strings?" he asked. "You're the professor. You know people." "I'm not in that world anymore," I said softly, "but I hear it's getting harder for folks who don't pay their dues." Click. Mom showed up at my hotel a week later. No warning. She wore pearls, her hair perfect, but there was something cracked in her voice. "Elena, this game you're playing, it's dangerous." "No more dangerous than what you did," I replied. "I was protecting the family." "No," I said. "You were protecting Caleb's illusion, and you erased me to do it." She looked at me then, maybe for the first time in years, not as the academic daughter, not as the disappointment, but as a woman she couldn't control anymore. "You're destroying everything we built." I stood, walked to the window. Outside, the land glowed golden in the sunset. "No, Mother. I'm rebuilding it. This time with the truth as the foundation." By summer, the whispers around town had become a storm. Ranchers who once praised Caleb now shook their heads. Feed suppliers started asking for upfront payments. The local banker, the same one who toasted him at last year's remembrance dinner, was avoiding his calls. The truth was leaking, one conversation at a time. It started when one of Caleb's hired contractors, used for expanding the cattle pens, sued him for non-payment. The court filing was public, and so was the attached financial statement. Turns out Caleb had taken a second mortgage on the main house. Not just the land, but the house our father built with his own hands. And even that loan was now delinquent. Mom was still holding on, still pouring whatever cash she had left into saving him. "It's just a rough patch," she told people at church. "We've weathered worse." But even the congregation started pulling away, because Elena Maybrook, the girl they forgot, was suddenly everywhere. See, I hadn't just bought land. I'd rebuilt legacy. I started a nonprofit initiative on the North Ridge educational field trips for underprivileged kids to experience farm life. We hosted riding lessons, built greenhouses, donated fresh produce to local schools. The town saw Maybrook land come alive again under a new name. Yes, but with old values. Values Caleb never understood. And one Sunday morning, a local news segment aired North Star Holdings, founded by Texas native Dr. Elena Maybrook, revives historic farmland for community enrichment. My name, my story, and not a single mention of Caleb or Maureen. That was the final crack. Caleb showed up at my ridge house 2 days later, mud on his boots, sweat on his brow, rage in his throat. "You think you're better than us now," he spat. "With your charity show and your lawyers and your fake LLC. I stayed calm. "I think I'm exactly what Dad hoped this land would return to." He paced, shaking his head. "You tricked everyone. You turned them against me." "No," I said. "You did that when you forgot what it meant to earn something." Then the letter came from the bank. Notice of foreclosure. Maybrook Estate, 314 Route 11. Due to unpaid debt totaling $687,000, the property will be seized unless full repayment is made within 30 days. They had no way to pay it. The loans were tangled. The land couldn't be used as collateral anymore because I owned everything around it. Mom tried selling the family jewels, tried calling in favors. Nothing worked. She came to me one last time. "Elena, it's still our home." "No," I said, "you made it Caleb's home. You told me I didn't belong. I didn't mean it. I was trying to do what was right for your favorite." I finished. She paused. Her eyes didn't have that old steel anymore, just shadows of regret. "What will you do with it?" I looked down at the foreclosure notice, then at the deed in my hand, the one I'd just purchased from the bank's private auction. "Nothing," I said. "Let it sit empty for a while." "Why?" "So the land can breathe again, without lies choking it." 2 weeks later, Caleb and my mother left the estate in silence. No press, no legacy, just a moving truck and two people who had burned every bridge behind them. I stood at the edge of the field barefoot in the dirt. The house in the distance looked smaller now, not because it had changed, but because I had. The estate sat vacant for months. No lights, no laughter, just wind curling through the cracked eaves of a house that had once held Sunday dinners and secrets. No one came to visit. No one dared to ask what happened to the great Maybrook name, and I didn't throw a party, I didn't post on social media, I didn't walk up the driveway and reclaim a throne. I let silence do what it does, best reveal what noise tried to hide. By winter, the foreclosure had finalized. Caleb left town last I heard. He sold the last of his cattle and moved somewhere near Houston, trying to start over in some corporate feed venture. I didn't follow up. My mother moved in with her sister in New Mexico. She sent me one letter handwritten for the first time in my adult life. "I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't expect it. But I want you to know, I see now, what I refused to. Then. You weren't the weak one, Elena. You were the seed, and I tried to bury you. But you grew. I didn't write back, but I kept the letter. Instead of taking back the family house, I turned my energy towards something better. I restored my father's original barn, the one far on the North Ridge, the one untouched by Caleb's renovations and debt. I rebuilt it as a community equine center just like I dreamed in college. We taught kids to ride, respect the land, and listen to animals' lessons. My father taught me under a crimson sunset when I was 6. And every weekend more people came. Some brought their children, others brought stories. I remember your dad, a man once told me, helped me mend a fence one winter without charging me a dime. I still have the leather work your mom gave my grandma, said another. Back when she was kind, I didn't correct them. The past had its own way of fading and reshaping itself. I wasn't here to avenge. I was here to reclaim. One foggy morning in March, I walked alone through the old estate. No one had touched it since they left. I still held the deed. The house was mine now, but I didn't live in it. I didn't tear it down either. I just let it breathe. Birds nested in the porch eaves. Ivy crept back across the western wall, and for the first time in years, I heard the wind rustle through the cottonwood trees like it used to when I was a girl, when I believed this place had magic. And maybe it still did. That day, a little girl, maybe 8, came riding up the hill on one of our teaching ponies. Her name was Ruby, a foster child who hadn't spoken in weeks when she first arrived. She tugged at my coat. "Miss Elena," I knelt. "Is this your house?" I looked at the hollowed place windows empty, memories sealed into the walls. It used to be, I said. But not anymore. Why don't you live in it? I smiled gently, because some places aren't meant to be homes again. Just reminders. She looked up at the sky. It's quiet. Yes, I said. That's how you know it's healing. I stayed until dusk, watching the last light hit the weathered front door, the same door my father built with his own hands. The same one my mother closed behind me, thinking I'd never return, but I did. And I didn't return for vengeance, I returned to plant something better. In the years that followed, the community center grew. We built a library barn, a greenhouse, and a scholarship program for rural kids. People stopped calling it the Maybrook land. They started calling it Elena's Ridge, and I never corrected them because in the end, this wasn't a story about revenge, it was about restoration. About choosing to rebuild instead of rot. About the quiet girl they thought would disappear, who came back and quietly took everything, not out of hate but out of love for what should have been. I didn't burn bridges, I built new ones and let the old ones fall on their own.